Shane.
Stanislav.
You know who you look a little bit like right now?
Do tell.
Rainbolt. Are you guys familiar with Rainbolt?
Is that Usain Bolt's brother?
Do they do sprinkler systems?
No, it's the viral GeoGuessr who's uncannily good and has some of the most hypnotic content in the internet.
I am so glad we're talking about this because I don't get what is going on with those people. How is that possible?
They learn a system much like any system, right? It's like they learn everything from like road sign
and like the electrical poles.
Really?
They just know like this type of electrical pole only exists in this country.
Really?
Yeah, they learn wild stuff, man.
But they also, their system includes like, they can look at a picture and know if it's on the northern or southern hemisphere based on the light. It's crazy.
I wish I looked more like Rainbolt. Let's say that.
I think if you shaved.
This guy is fascinating, though. I've watched him a few times, and I'm like, what is up with this?
He's good. He's my new favorite streamer.
Okay.
Don't tell Doomwake.
GeoGuessr.
Hello and welcome to episode 284 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from Denver, Colorado, it's the one and only Shane Beeps.
I'm glad you're chipper, Stanislav. I'm glad you're chipper. You've got so much. You've got the child off your belly, off of your sternum.
There's that.
It's the end of the day. It's 9 p.m. Central Time. We're just getting started.
We're starting a little late today.
Little late.
Partially my fault.
We were also talking about shipping out Patreon packages when you popped in. We're in the middle of reconciling some important things.
Very exciting.
Well, I feel like we're almost all caught up.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of stuff has been delivered on the pirate ship tracking.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm happy about that.
Also with us, the Godfather, Dave Harbarger.
I just want to say, people out there waiting for playmats, we are working on coming to you. I'm not going to name names. Drew S., George J., James, A's and N. I'm coming for you soon.
You almost make it sound like when you don't want to name names, like they've done something wrong, when in fact they've done nothing wrong but support our show and been incredibly patient with us.
I mean, let's talk about how wrong that it is to encourage us, to be honest.
Yes. Yes.
Look what we've done with the most minimal amount of encouragement. We've been doing this for 6 years.
Keeps getting. Is that true?
Just about.
Oh my goodness. It's going to do something for probably longer than 6 years and longer than this podcast is Heavy Play at Card Gaming Accessories brand.
Not bland.
Your gameplay.
They're anything but bland.
And your game day. Heavy Play has a play. Stan's got one in his hands. He's sniffing and he's snapping that deck box. He also has a playmat. He also has card sleeves. Dave's got a deck box as well in patented Dave Boring Black. That's the official color name. Dave's Boring Black.
Stylish. Look who's in this one.
Oh,
you guys didn't know I had this guy, did you?
The Time Raveler.
The least surprising reveal of all, Dave. You own a Teferi.
Enhanced ergonomics, enhanced mobility, enhanced protection. Okay, right? So, the cool thing, magnets. We've mentioned the magnets. The thing I like the most personally is just grabbing various cases and throwing them together. I can either do a color thing, I can do a size thing, I can, I've got 3 different playmats, I believe. So I can, I do what I want. I've got colors galore, and I mix and match them at my will.
And I just keep them all in stylish Godfather Black is what I call it. Godfather Black.
Randy, petition to change this to Godfather Black, please.
Yeah, from Warlock Black to Godfather Black.
Godfather Black. You can attach all of your stuff, your dice boxes to your deck boxes. You make little custom bundles. You carry everything around. Single hand, single tote bag, whatever you want to do. It's potentially at your LGS if you're a lucky person. You can also always shop at heavyplay.com. Use our code TheDiveDown2024. The Dive Down 2024 for 10% off of your first order. And Randy and the crew are going to be at any number of events. We mentioned them all last week. I'm not going to do it again this week, but in the future you'll hear us say them again. But pretty much any event you're going to go to that's in IRL is going to have heavy play there. So go tell them the Dive Down sent you. Stanislav.
Shanislav.
This week's show, baby. We've got
results.
We've got results.
We got Bloomburrow. This is a very bifurcated episode to me, right? We've got reels and then we've got feels in that order, right? We've got the reels. We have what happened at the NRG 10K Showdown in Chicagoland. Briefly talk about the Super Qualifier on MTGO, mainly because it's, spoilers, weirdly different than the paper event at NRG. Then we have a bunch of cool spoilers. I had not looked at a single Bloomburrow spoiler since we were in Chicago at the Magic Con.
Where they showed like 5.
Yeah, where they showed like 5 things. And I was just, I try not to get the drip feed anymore. I like looking all at once. And in all caps in our episode planning channel, I said, so many interesting one drops.
And you even left one of them off.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm glad that there's another interesting one drop I didn't put on so we've got some cool stuff to talk about.
Yep. And then, you know what we don't have? Any quarter from Wizards of the Coast on the ongoing terror that is Nadu in Modern. But I guess we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute.
Oh, okay. I thought you had some kind of surprise for us.
No, the surprise was that there wasn't a surprise today, as far as I'm concerned. Yes. This is Monday, so I'm a little surprised that we didn't have a surprise today.
But I have a new. Oh, yes. I do have a new theory, a new conspiracy theory, but I'll share that when the time is appropriate.
Perfect. We got some housekeeping.
Sure. We don't have new patrons or increased tiers, but we do have a couple more new reviews.
Love it.
So thanks this week goes to Mr. Owl S2. Mr. Owls 2.
Well, I think it's Mr. Owl. Do you guys see it, Mr. Owl Season 1? Because it's really hard to watch Season 2 if you didn't watch Mr. Owl Season 1.
Mr. Owl, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the Dive Down podcast?
On this prestige podcast, we investigate how many licks it takes to get to the center of the conspiracy of the Tootsie Roll Pop. They called us a treat, by the way, which is nice.
I am grateful for Mr. Owl's review indicating that our voices are very soothing.
Soothing.
I don't always consider my voice particularly soothing, but if others feel that way, I'm grateful. We do also have another review from Mateson, who claims we're the best constructed and modern focused podcast there is. That is a very high honor to accept, and I will accept it on behalf of my co-hosts.
Like I said, see what happens if you encourage us just a little bit.
So thank you for leaving some reviews. If you'd like to review the show, you can do it on Apple Podcasts. We used to ask you to do it on Spotify. You can't do that anymore, but the Apple reviews are very nice. We see them, we read them, and they make us cry.
So I don't know what's going on with Spotify, but I will mention that I can see an interaction portal in the back end of Spotify still. So I don't know if they're working on rolling out some kind of new feature that's not done yet, but I do believe that reviews and comments will return to Spotify at some point in the future because it looks like the CMS is there for it, baby.
Ooh.
The content management system?
Yeah, I have more tools to like approve and reply to comments now than I did before, but there are no new comments because there's no way to give them. So I don't know if it's just like I haven't updated the app. Maybe that's what it is. It's like you need a new version to Spot. I'm going to try right now.
While Dave is doing that, you can support the show. I mentioned you can do it through a review. You can also do it financially via Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown. You could do it by buying some stuff from our online shop at thedivedown.com/store. You can also do it while playing Magic Online with a Mana Trader subscription if you use our promo code, which is in July, the divedown_8LU. And this does go through the middle of August. So depending on when you're listening to this, check the show notes of, I guess, the most recent episode to get the most recent code. And with all that out of the way, let's talk about Nerd Rage Gaming, which does in fact offer an 8% discount on all orders from their web store if you use promo code DIVE8. And I'm sure lots of people did that to get their cards for the Saturday 10K Modern Showdown in Mundelein, Chicago.
Chicagoland. Mundelein, Chicago. Is that that's the state of Chicago?
That's
the
right.
State of being, baby.
We might as well be.
Yeah.
We run this monkey farm.
I mean, Stan and I were both there for part of the day for a very brief part
for
of
a
Saturday.
cool 90 minutes.
A cool single round and a single elimination tournament. No big deal.
You go to Applebee's after that? Go get a steak?
I asked Stan to go to Applebee's after we were both eliminated in the first round of the Reese queue, and he was like, I got to get home to my family. And I was like, why?
What?
Why?
Are you kidding? You had the hall pass.
I'll tell you why. Because David not once used the word Applebee's. David was like, hey, you want to go get a beer? And I'm like, no, David, because I'm assuming he's just going to put a beer bong in my mouth while he stands like on the garage roof.
You want to get a $1 marg?
Next time I'll be more specific.
I didn't realize Applebee's was on the
Liz from
menu.
Survivor was going to meet us to hang out there. It was all that stuff.
You know, I love that whiskey burger.
Whiskey bourbon bacon burger?
I'm pissed.
That season ended up being really good. Okay.
An icon.
So we got a couple of things. We got 219 players. Okay. Unfortunately, we didn't have TV coverage because everyone signed up at like literally the last minute. I don't know what they were doing.
It was wild. Like 85 people signed up the last night or something like that. 80 plus.
Yeah. So we didn't have TV coverage or stream coverage, unfortunately. Makes sense. You know, you don't want to put that investment in if you don't have a lot of people. But there ended up being 219. I did my favorite thing. I downloaded deck lists. I made sure they were what they said they were as much as I could. And I turned them in to a pivot table and a pie chart.
Yes.
I did both things. Both things, baby.
Slay.
So here's what we got. Okay. Here's what we got.
Shane, you like it when I tell you to slay?
we have I'm laughing at that and also to this big blue piece of the pie chart with this damn deck. Nadu at 39 players, 17.8% of the metagame.
It's less than the Pro Tour, brother. Less than the Pro Tour.
It's still I just have a really hard time understanding. I mean, 39 players is not that many, I guess, but like, I'm just struggling to be like, how long do you think this is going to be playable, my friends? Like, you got a bunch of specialized cards at the peak of their value. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I'm going to go to some event and like get my money back out of my deck investment, but I'm also not a Nadu player. The 39 people, 28 people on Jeskai control variants, 12.8%. This includes stuff that's like labeled like Jeskai Dress Down and like Jeskai Energy. They're effectively very similar. Sometimes even Jeskai Energy has Dress Down, so I wasn't gonna, differ between those two. Gruul Prowess, interestingly, falls off a bit. 10 players, 4.6% of the metagame. Then we've got Esper Goryo's Vengeance, Esper Reanimator, 4.1, Ruby Storm, 3.7, Living End, 3.7, Eldrazi Tron Variants at 3.7, Boros Burn, 3.2, more on that later. Mono Black Necro Decks, 2.7, and Merfolk, also at 2.7.
I honestly cannot believe that what you're about to mention is true here. We have seen Boros Energy as one of the top 3 decks from most events that we're looking at, and I am shocked that apparently only 3 people brought Boros Energy, with an additional 5 bringing Mardu Energy, according to your notes. So that would put it at about 4% of the meta. I am shocked that it's that small.
I am very shocked. I am energy shocked with a little lightning bolt symbol, because the other category, which is everything below 2.7% of the meta, I honestly usually do it at 3%, but I was so embarrassed that almost half the meta would be other that I put Merfolk and Mono Black Necro on the list. So, at 41.1%, 90 players were on decks with fewer than 2.7% of representation.
I do like that.
No, it's cool.
I like when other is. You shouldn't be embarrassed if other is a close to 50%. I think that would be a good thing if it was true. Did you reconcile these lists? Did you say?
Oh yeah, man. I did.
Wow.
I did all that
Okay.
I dug deep as much as I could.
Also, Boros Energy is a somewhat inexpensive deck to get at this point.
It's good and it's not too expensive, right?
Yeah, so I don't know.
Stuff's going on.
I guess it's Flage and Ajani. Those are not the easiest to get. But
Ocelot Pride, also not cheap.
Ocelot Pride.
Today.
Poppin'.
yeah,
Ragavans, if you don't have those.
Yeah, I mean, many lists aren't even playing Ragavan, are only playing like one these days.
I think those lists are incorrect, and Stan can talk more about that.
Well, I mean, we can
later.
also look at the challenge results in a second after that. But
Yep.
Mardu Energy, 5 copies. This is just stuff that's just outside in the other category. So Mardu Energy with 5, like you said, only 3 on Boros. Is it Wizards was just outside? Is it Murktide? Come on, everybody. Not on the list much at all, surprisingly. Domain Zoo, Eldrazi mid-range kind of variants, and Yawgmoth, I think, was one player on Yawgmoth, which is wild to me. So we've got that. Then I did my new favorite thing, my non-scientific division of number of players by total win points, total match points, right? And I organized these by top to bottom of anything with 3 or more pilots, because it gave us some interesting data here of maybe some sleepers, right? So this is in order from top to bottom. Teamer Breach, 15.3 average match points with only 3 pilots. So again, keep this in mind. This is not scientific. This is just some interesting anecdotal data. Boros Energy, 3 pilots, 14.7 average match points. Mono Black Necro had 6 pilots, as we mentioned, 13.3. Boros Prowess, 13. Nadu, here we go. The 39 players on Nadu still averaged 12.2 match points. Pretty darn good for that much data. I will note that Nadu also made up 14 of the top 32, about 43% of the top 32. Note that is about 2.5% of its initial representation of 17.8. So it converted quite well to the top 32.
Well, they got their money's worth on Shukos. Yeah. There you go.
They did that stuff. There's a bunch of stuff in the middle that's just kind of like fine. There were some interesting like outliers or things that I was surprised by, more towards the bottom, things that didn't perform very well. Those included Jeskai Control, 28 players, 8.5 average match points. Eldrazi Tron, 8 players, 8.75 average match points. Living End, 8.25. Boros Burn, 5.6. And Ruby Storm, 5.25. That's less than 2 wins, by the way. If you don't know how this works, basically every win is 3 match points. So you can just take what we did and divide it by 3, and then you kind of get your average number of rounds you won out of, I believe it was 9 rounds of Swiss, maybe 8. I forget at this point. Okay.
It's 8 rounds of Swiss, by the way.
8 rounds of Swiss. Thank you, my friend. So there you go. Those are the sort of general performances of stuff. We have the general meta of stuff. Any thoughts on this? None. I guess we've probably said it already.
I mean, listen, there's a bird in the room still.
It's not banned.
It's causing a good amount of problems. It's doing well. It's not banned. I'm still having some fun, but I played against Nadu in the hands of a very capable player who I believe we've talked about on the podcast before, someone who's done well at these energy events, and he totally destroyed me.
Just smushed you?
Yeah, and it's not easy to beat. It's not easy deck to beat.
What were you playing, David?
Jeskai Control.
Okay.
Actually.
So when you're playing Jeskai Control versus this, are you just like strictly hoping for like Wrath of the Skies or whatever the heck that card is?
I don't think I have a good answer because that's the only match that I've played against with it. I've only played like 5 matches with Jeskai Control. It's just what I had on hand and could take with me, and I had almost everything together already. I didn't have to get any cards other than buy a couple of flages off of Stan that he had acquired extra for me. And it felt like a pretty powerful deck on Moto, but I didn't run into Nadu while I was playing, and then I got there and just got waxed. I did bring in all of my wraths that are in my list. There were 6 wraths in the 75, and I brought them in. I opened game 2 with 4 wraths across like my first 2 turns in my hand, and they can recover pretty easily from wrath sometimes.
How annoying.
Kinda.
How do they do that, Dave?
Most of it's just by redrawing lots of cards, making extra tokens, having lands in play from going off with Nadu a little bit, quarter calling into something again. And if you wrath, sometimes you don't have mana up to counter the quarter calling. You know what I mean? Or at least I didn't in a couple of games that I played. The other thing I would say is I actually did lose to a Shifting Woodlands out of it, where they used that to bring a Nadu back from the graveyard basically after I killed everything, and that just got them going again. So
cool.
So there's stuff.
Stanislav, you were on Boros Energy?
I was. But I also was summarily destroyed in round 1 of our single elimination RCQ.
By the Bat Nadu?
By a fan of the show who was playing like Eldrazi aggro, who managed to go turn 1 Dismember, turn 2 Chalice on both of our games, and I had a really hard time recovering after that.
Yeah.
So they had the Chalice game 1, so they couldn't have been that aggressive.
I guess not, but yeah, maybe it was like more of an Eldrazi mid-range, but it was really cool what they did, because game 1, they had main deck Chalice. They also had main deck Trinisphere. It felt like they were metagaming.
Yeah, it was that one. It was the more prison-y version.
And I learned a lot about the interaction between like Trinisphere and Amped Raptor, for instance. Turns out you can't pay with just energy if Trinisphere is on the board.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, the deck was very, very good against me. I had kind of like middling starts, and Flynn had the ideal start. And it was the end of that $20 entry fee.
Well, we had a nice time eating Taco Bell in your car beforehand. So
did we spend more time on our Taco Bell run than we did in the RCQ that we played?
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
But not at the post-game Applebee's, unfortunately.
Stan just wasn't strong enough.
I really wasn't. Here's another look behind the camera. One of the reasons I was able to make this tournament is because I had arranged some babysitting for my parents to look after my almost 3-year-old. And I got to the tournament and I got a text from my mom that my kid had just gone down for a nap. I texted my mom that I'm leaving the tournament, and she was like, yeah, we're about to wake up Oscar from his nap. So like I could have probably just left him at home asleep by himself and had the exact same outcome. But instead he had a fun day with grandparents. That's how quick our pop-in was.
That's funny.
Turned out. But you know what? I had a nice time.
As long as you had a good time. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. There's something to say here. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised at like the lack of performance by Jeskai Control. I mean, under 3 wins on average. Eldrazi Tron's middling for, pretty, not great performance, a little bit surprising. I think that deck's going to go through phases where it's better than others. It's if it's designed around being, especially the high mana value stuff and hurting the low mana value stuff with Trinispheres. Ruby Storm looks like it's going to have been a flash in the pan. Yeah, it looks like it's not going to be ideal, which is too bad. Like, it's like, I do feel bad for the Storm gamers sometimes. It's like, if it's going to come back, it's going to be from this.
I mean, maybe there's a chance that it does better in a post-Nadu world. Have hope.
There always is.
Yeah. I don't want it to be too good. I want it to be good enough. All right, let's get to the top 8. Might as well. This is where things get funny. Theodore Young on Bat Nadu. Harrison Canfer on Bat Nadu. Reed Anderson on Eldrazi Mono Green Tron.
Can we just do this real quick?
Yeah.
There were 4 Bant Nadu lists.
Yes,
Theodore
4.
Young, Harrison Canfer, John Wager, and Heath Vance all on Bant Nadu.
And we had 2 on Jeskai Dress Down, Energy Control, Christian Valenti, and Joseph Bernal. You've heard that name before.
Sure. Joe Bernal will always top 8 in NRG on
with a control deck.
Yep.
Yeah. And then what do we have? The most interesting things we have Reed Anderson on the Eldrazi Mono Green Tron. This is kind of a hybrid between like a green Tron list with like the classic Urza lands, but along with the 8 soul lands of Labyrinth and Temple. There's no main deck Trinispheres, anything like that. It's just kind of like Tron stuff. Like there's a couple Ulamog, 3 All This Dust main, which I think is a very smart move. Talisman of Resilience. These talismans are becoming more and more prevalent in these Eldrazi Tron style decks just for additional ramp, especially because they cost 2 mana. You can play them off of your soul lands. Or actually, you can only play them off of your Labyrinth. They are not Eldrazi spells to play off of Temple. So I'm seeing more of them. I have not played them myself, so maybe they're cool, maybe they're not. We have Eric Hennig on Boros Energy. Eric played 3 main deck Blood Moons and no Ragavans.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Have you done the main deck Blood Moon yet, Stan?
That's this week's assignment.
Love it. Love to see it.
Your hypothesis up until now, though, has been you want Ragavan if you're going to have Blood Moon, though, right? Because
the early Blood
increases, Moon? Yeah, it increases your chance to do a turn 2/1. So it's interesting to see Eric play with less of a chance of that happening.
That's true, and I feel like the jury's out a little bit because I'm seeing Young Dingo do well with some Ragavans. I'm seeing Bamzing do well without. Maybe it's dealer's choice.
Yeah.
So, and then Theo Young wins it all on a Bant Nadu Mirror Finals versus Harris and Canfer. Congrats, Theo. Theo wins a lot of these things. Knows what they are doing. Okay. Then we have the Modern Super Qualifier, 310 players, actually more than Nerd Rage Gaming, but it's also online, a lot easier. So thank you, Bamzing, for your nice little breakdown. Did the X and 2 breakdown. Listen to this. 8 Control, 7 Energy, 2 4-color Goryo's Vengeance, 2 Tron, 1 colorless, 1 mono green, and then a handful of 1-ofs, like 6 1-ofs, like Necro, Mill, Naya, Eldrazi, Living End, Through the Breach, Bant Nadu, 1 Bant Nadu, and the X or 2 and better in the 310 players. So that's interesting. So there's a lot more control here, a lot less Bant Nadu. And I'd say, not much prowess, a few Goryos in there, like no Storm, if I'm counting correctly. Yeah. So it is a little higher on the energy for sure.
Well, this is only top 32 available to us, or do we have more than that?
Yeah, well, no, only the top 32 from this.
So Bant Nadu only took 1 deck to top 32. We could probably assume there are more Nadu players in the tournament.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe there was just an overrepresentation of control helping to keep it at bay.
Yeah, that's really kind of what this is all about, right? This is the X and 2, so this is what did well. So, yeah, I think multiple people like in the Reddit thread were like, yeah, I played Nadu 3 times on my way up type stuff. So it was there, but maybe people are perhaps figuring out how to beat it. Maybe they're just figuring out, maybe the Nadu pilots ran bad. There's a lot of options here for this. How do you feel like the energy matchup is against Nadu Stanislav? Because we did see 7 energy decks, 4 Mardu, 3 Boros in the X and 2 breakdown.
I have not seen it online, but all the data points to bad for energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, it makes sense because it's a lot of creatures. I don't know how you're attacking through them very well.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to get in the top 8. I just wanted to call that out just because it is a different slice of the modern life there. Perhaps a foretelling of things to come. We'll find out. Maybe Ban Out is doing really poorly on Magic Online, and that's why Wizards isn't like rushing to ban things, but we'll see. Here's our top 8. We've got Vinny Torres on Demir Mill. No, actually, this is Azorius Mill. That can't be right, but maybe it is. Mill wins.
Ooh.
Yes, it does. Yep.
We're so back.
You're so back. Jeskai Control, TSP Yendrick, Basic Energy List, Zanman. Very cool list by a listener, a Faithless Brewing contributor, all-around grinder, Lawson Zandy. This is a Gruul ramp list with 4 Emrakul, The Promised End, Sowing Microspawn, World Breaker, a bunch of ramp like Talisman of Impulse, Utopia Sprawl, Malevolent Rumble, which is a card we haven't really talked about much, but I've seen in a few cool lists. Of course, the 8 Soul Lands, so Lawson did really well here. Boy Triton just got control 4th place. Tangerina 5th place with 4-color living end. A Turtle 6th place Boros Energy. 4 Ranger Captain of Eos in this list. Have you played anything with Ranger Captain yet, Stanislav?
I haven't. I saw that though. It's interesting because it kind of gets like all of your good cards, but
exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
You know, at the top of our curve.
But it's also Ranger Captain of Eos.
Yeah, and I do like the idea of having a ranger to sacrifice to protect you from wraths. Like that might be the actual best reason to put him in your deck. But.
Besides all this dust. Mm-hmm. And then we've got 7th place Dookie Trouser MD. That's a really funny name, by the way. Boros Energy. No Unstable Amulet, 2 main deck Blood Moon, a couple Bone Crusher Giants for flavor. This person actually won another challenge later on with the same list, they said, in thread. And they said that they really love the Singleton main deck Disruptor Flute, even game 1, like naming something sort of in the blind, naming something that you knew the opponent would have that you don't want them to have. So they said that it did work for them all weekend. And then Jarvis ME on Gruel Through the Breach for 8th place. So this is a very different meta than the NRG. Nadu is dead. We're saved. But maybe it's just too tedious to play online. Maybe people are finding answers online faster than they are on paper. But Dave, you did mention that there is a Saturday Modern Showcase qualifier that maybe had all the Nadu in it.
Yes. There was, 5 in this top 8?
Yeah.
5 in this top 8, piloted by people like Karate Dom 10, who is a well-known Magic online grinder. Matt Nass was piloting one. Burnt Taco 77. These are all people that are well-known Moto players.
Yes. One of the things that surprised me about this tournament was the surprising lack of Necro. Maybe Necro is a little bit overrepresented. I don't think it did particularly well. No, actually did quite well at the NRG, 13.3 average match win points. So.
And it put 2 in the top 8 of this Modern Showcase qualifier as well.
Of the Saturday?
Yeah, the Saturday event.
For sure. So there we go. That's just 2 different slices, the paper meta, the online meta. We'll keep our eyes on the online meta. We know that it shifts quickly, so it could just be an aberration. Next tournament, we're going to see 4 or 5 Bant Nadus in there. But, one of the things that will inform not Eldrazi's, WotC's decision on whether or not to make any kind of move on Nadu before, during RCQ season, I think is going to be the data that they're getting back. So have to remember that. Any final thoughts before we move on to a lot of thoughts about Bloomburrow, my friends?
Can I share my 4 conspiracy theories about what's going on with Nadu?
Oh, yeah. Please itemize them.
You have 4 of them?
Well, they're not even conspiracy theories. They're 4 plausible explanations of why Nadu has not been banned yet. And I'll rapid fire them. My first, and I think maybe the most cynical take is, maybe they just think it's okay. Why ban something? It's not that crazy, so it's popular. Win rates aren't excessive.
Yes, they are.
Okay. What's next one?
It was 61% overall at the NRG, by the way. I didn't get to the win rate matrix because that would get really in the weeds, but yeah, it did quite well.
Mm-hmm. Is that a lot?
61% sounds okay. Go on.
That's a D. The other one, maybe they need more data, including financial data, to explain to their internal stakeholders that making this card from the current imprint set illegal to play is actually worth it from a financial perspective. And
Yes.
that could mean selling packs, that could mean tournament attendance, that could mean stonks, I don't know.
I mean, my take there is that even if this is a black eye, the card is not that expensive, and getting rid of it would make probably a whole lot of their other mythics more desirable from the set. Mm-hmm. So hopefully, I do think if you were, a lot of times people say, we're not going to ban a card from an imprint set, right? Because it's valuable or it's a chase card or whatever. Nadu's not really a chase card.
No.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of other cards in the set are. So I think
Polluted Delta.
the financial argument in this one actually goes the other way.
Yes. Number 3, maybe there's internal forces preventing an emergency ban and we have to remain patient until the scheduled announcement. Like maybe someone on R&D is like, we have to get rid of this card, but someone's boss's boss is like, no more bans until the normal window. we have a policy in place and we cannot deviate from it. Like,
I think that's very likely.
okay. And in my fourth one, maybe this is the most conspiratorial. Maybe executing a ban is harder than we think. Maybe it's not just saying like this card's illegal and telling Moto not to like register, like make those decks playable on the platform anymore. Like maybe there's some other ins and outs that they have to account for that our small, smooth brains can't even begin to fathom.
I mean, if I can't, there are things that we know, and there are things that we know we don't know, and there are things that we don't know that we don't know. And so maybe it's that third bucket. I think is fair. Maybe there is something that we don't know.
All right. Well, that was Stan's Conspiracy Corner this week.
Love it.
All right, guys, did you know there's a new set coming out?
I can barely contain my excitement.
It's honestly, as soon as I saw the cards in the set, I got a lot more excited.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my kind of set in terms of like, maybe I would actually want to play limited in this set. Like, I love like on rails, tribal, or typal type sets.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, just give me like some clean, clear mechanics. Give me some otters. Give me some badgers. This is what I want to be doing.
And based on what we've seen so far, this limited format actually looks really fast to me, which I think also personal preference, of course, but makes for really fun limited environments. Just kind of like play little creatures, little critters, and go bang bang.
Yeah, I think there are clear aggressive animals, but then I also like look at some of them and it's like there's a lot of like recursion stuff going on. There's a lot of like graveyard shenanigans. You have to fill your graveyard for them to work at all. So I'm curious what the tensions will be there. But we are famously a limited podcast. So
third best limited podcast in the Magic the Gathering sector.
Yeah, definitely. I did my favorite thing of talking about mechanics.
Oh, okay, that one.
I'm going to go through these as quickly as possible. I think some are actually pretty interesting. Some like Offspring is just a kicker variant, but Offspring
it's cool.
It's cool. It's found on creature cards. It's an optional additional cost you can pay or not pay as you cast the card. And then if you do, when the creature enters the battlefield or enters, as they say now, which looks very strange to me whenever I see it, you create a token that is a copy of that creature, except the token is a 1/1. So it's just a baby version of the original creature. It has all the same text, same name, same creature type, mana cost, mana value, abilities. It's just power and toughness 1/1. So what's interesting is that the Offspring are typically things that you want to have tokens of. So it's like mana ramp cards or like pingers. There's just lots of interesting options here. Some on the cards that some of this is on cards we're going to talk about later in this episode. Just be sure to keep the tokens separated in your deck box.
How dare you?
Ooh.
To not get confused.
Come
You
on.
gotta keep them separated.
Thanks for just on the nose there, Stanislav. There's also
easily my least favorite band of that era, I have to say.
You don't like
By
Offspring?
far. No, hate.
You hate
Mega
Offspring?
hate. Terrible.
what's weird is I think that
worst.
there are people who like were into Offspring before they got the radio play, and they were like, Offspring's really actually a good band, like for that style of music. And I was like, I'm going to trust you on that one.
No.
Yes. No, Shane's right. Offspring's good.
Gift. As you cast so there's permanent spells with gift, and there's like instants and sorceries with
Sorry,
gift.
the only good thing about the Offspring is that they made the guy from Bad Religion a bunch of money because they were on Epitaph. That's the only good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay, permanent.
They're a real
gonna
punk
have
band,
gift.
though. Like, that's the thing that people forget about the Offsprings.
Promise the gift to an opponent if you want. It's optional. So with a permanent spell, the opponent doesn't immediately get the gift. You're just promising to give them a gift. And when it enters, then the opponent receives the gift. Each of these cards with gift has like additional or alternate effects if it like was or was not promised. So just here's an example. This is an instant, okay? Parting Gust, white instant. Gift a tapped fish. You may promise an opponent a gift as you cast the spell. If you do, they create a tapped 1/1 blue fish creature token before its other effects. And this exiles a target non-token creature, blah, blah, blah. That's not as important as the gift of tapped fish, right? Okay. So The instant or sorcery works just like it does for a permanent. As you cast the spell, it's an additional cost. The opponent receiving the gift, however, gets it a little bit differently. They get the gift first. And so, like, in Parting Gust, they would get the tapped 1/1 blue fish creature. Then the spell's other effects happen. The spell has to resolve for the gift to be received. So all that good stuff, right? You can't counter it and get the gift.
This is really important for ones that say gift a card.
Yes.
Worth noting, because the way that you said it for a second there made it sound like they get the thing, then they get to respond to the spell, and they do not. They get the card at the same when the spell responds, but in order of the effects resolving, they get their thing first.
Okay. We've got Forage. It's a new keyword action on some cards. Foraging is exiling 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrificing a food. And here's an important thing to note. You can't sacrifice a food both to forage and to gain life. It's kind of obvious, but thought I'd note it. We have a card with forage on it we're going to talk about later on, so no example for now. Valiant. This is a new ability word. Triggered abilities that trigger whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn only.
Sounds like heroic, but not as good.
Yeah, yes, not as good. We have at least one Valiant card to talk about later. Expend is not very good, I don't think, just on the cards that it's on, actually. It seems kind of a pain in the butt. You have to track how much mana you spend to cast spells over the course of a turn. So, like, Junkblade Bruiser is like 3 Gruul hybrid. It's just a trample that whenever you expend 4... So once you cast four things of mana, it gains +2/+1 until end of turn. So have fun tracking that, my friends.
Yeah.
There you go. Those are the mechanics. I think some are cool. Some are kicker variants, but we'll see.
Kicker variants are fine.
Yeah, they're always fine. All right, my friends, let's get in these lands. Hidden Grotto. This is an interesting land. I don't know how good it is. So it is a non-typed surveil land that makes colorless. It does not enter the battlefield tapped, and when it ETBs, you surveil 1, and you can also pay 1 and tap it, and then add 1 mana of any color. So it's a surveil land. It makes colorless. I don't know if you need to be like surveil/scrying in like a deck that is primarily looking to play colorless, but you can also play colored mana with it. Like you have Kozilek's command to scry like 20 if you want. So
scry 20.
But it exists. This land definitely is printed.
I don't think it makes the cut. Even though it comes in untapped, like I think that's the one benefit, but it's not fetchable.
No. You don't want this in your Eldrazi Tron style deck. You don't want to draw this probably. So we'll see. I don't think it does much.
It's a common. I think it's probably just limited color fixing.
Yeah. But we do have 3 Trees City.
Yes.
One
we've known about for some time, actually. And I think people have been dissecting it for weeks, if not months now. It's a legendary land. When it enters, you choose a creature type. You can tap to add colorless, or you can pay to tap it, choose a color, and add an amount of mana of that color equal to the number of creatures you control of the type. So it's like a typal Nykthos, essentially, that can produce any color of mana if your creatures generate that color. Or not even. No, you just, in any color, you just have to, it can produce any color of mana. You just have to have enough creatures to make it worth it, essentially.
Yeah. This card is less powerful than Nykthos, but I also think can be more broadly applicable than Nykthos, I think. Like, I wonder if it's, because the fact that you don't have to build your, you have to warp your deck in a different way, right? So you're not doing a weird thing like playing as many color pips as you can to make it, when you make Devotion good. In this one, you can make a bunch of tokens of goblins or something, let's say, or some other thing, and then just like turn this on to get a bunch of mana occasionally from it. I don't know if you need all that mana if you're making a bunch of tokens, but maybe there's probably some kind of combo dream here with that.
What you gonna do with all that mana? No, I think it's when I was doing this, I was like, is this better than worse than Nykthos? I was like, no, it's just different. It's just different.
Yeah.
I wonder if something like this could be useful in a Pioneer Convoke deck, a Pioneer Elves deck, where they are producing a ton of tokens that don't translate into Nykthos mana. And maybe making those tokens provide some additional value could be enough for a one-of in decks like that.
Yeah, I think the card that you actually sort of need to compare this to is Growing Rites of Itlimoc.
Ooh,
which is like the fake Gaia's Cradle that was in Ixalan and is also in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So this one says it's, it lets you do a search for cards from your library, and at the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures, you transform Growing Rites. Then on the back, it's a Gaia's Cradle. You tap it, and it adds green for each creature you control.
I disagree that that's what we're comparing it to, because this is a land that is a 3-mana enchantment, and that only produces green.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I think this is more of a comparison to that, because it's like, if you want to pay off for creatures, there is one that exists already in Pioneer and Modern already. It's this card. I think that 3 Tree City is probably easier to get smaller increments of mana off of, and potentially, and you don't have to transform it,
because
which
it's always one.
Is going to be hard.
It's always a land that at least taps for 1.
Right, exactly. And sometimes this card just does nothing. Now, the thing that I mostly think is interesting about this is that this card used to be $1 zillion because it was an EDH staple, and now it's cheap because it was reprinted. And now I think that there's a chance that this could just be mega EDH bait more than... But you never know. A lot of times these EDH cards are really powerful in constructed these days now. So we'll see.
Should we go through some additional 1-drops?
I love to go by mana value. Let's do it.
The first one that I saw that looked exciting was Heartfire Hero. Red mana for a mouse soldier. It has Valiant. Whenever the hero becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When Heartfire Hero dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. And it is a 1/1.
Yep.
Hard to imagine this in anything other than heroic decks. But the fact that it has that additional death trigger could be a cool compensation for the distinction between this and actual heroic ability. Whereas heroic triggers when someone else targets, blah, blah, blah.
I like the reach here. I mean, Dave, you play a lot more heroic than I have, and for a very long time. But I can see this sort of doing double duty, right? Where it's like it's a cheap 1-drop. You can add a 1/1 counter. And what's interesting too is like a lot of the spells that you would cast on it are also adding additional power and toughness potentially, right? Like you could be playing like pump spells or counter producing spells, get this up to a reasonable power and toughness for a 1-drop, and then if and when it dies, then you're sort of getting free reach off it. So that's best case scenario, of course, but that's kind of what you are designing your 1-drops around anyway, is the best case scenario of them coming down early, doing something, and then doing something when they die, or if you're lucky.
Yeah, the card that this reminds me of a little bit is Cacophony Scamp from Phyrexia All Will Be One, which is a card that whenever it deals damage to a player, you may sacrifice it, and then when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. It's a 1/1, and this is one where people are trying to do combos with this where you try to pump it up really big and then sack it or do something wild like that, and this one comes with its own trigger, right, where it's kind of like it builds up on its own. So I think this is an interesting card that's a variation on that. I do think that these kind of things are better when you get to decide when to kill them, right? So maybe you're looking at some kind of like Rakdos list where you're playing, Village Rites or something like that to go with it. But having some way to sacrifice so you can deal damage when you want seems interesting to me. Definitely more Pioneer than Modern from my reading for sure. And as you said, Shane, or noted in the notes, it might not even be good enough for Pioneer. Yeah, but it's a cool card.
It reminds me more of like Azorius Heroic from like Khan's era standard. You know what I mean? Yeah. Into the Floodmaw, a blue instant. Gift a tapped fish. It seems like a bad spell, Shane. But you return target creature.
Gift a tapped fish is my favorite Steely Dan song.
You return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand if the gift was promised. Instead, return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Okay. Slightly innocuous. I will say this is the cheapest this effect has been available at instant. Void Snare from M15 is a sorcery for returning a target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Of course, returning target creature, that's just Vapor Snag, right?
Sure.
Okay, sure. But you can bounce a problem creature for cheap, or you can gift them a potentially useless tapped fish token if you're winning with like a Killing Strike or winning with a combo with this, right? Or you could prevent them from killing you with like a Titan or something like that, right? So I think it's probably most useful for like a combo deck who wants to get rid of like an annoying hate piece for a cheaper price than Otawara. Of course, Otawara has the fallback of being a land when you need it to be, right? Which is always good. It's always great to play an Otawara if you need mana. You cannot play this for mana. However, this does not cost 4. It costs 1. So I can see some applications of this mainly because it's an instant speed Void Snare.
Yes. I think this card is interesting. I do think cards like this are actually somewhat good sometimes in tempo decks too, where you're just trying to get a big threat out of the way so you can keep attacking. Think about Vapor Snag, which I know sounds like we're talking about Void Snare, but it was a card that removed a creature for a single blue and did 1 damage to your opponent. That 1 damage was often important, but that's what that card was for. And so if there is like prowessy style things supported in this set, maybe this is a place to do that to help you do some tempo-y. That kind of game plan obviously is not part of Modern as much anymore. Maybe Pioneer, although I think Pioneer is almost too powerful, this kind of thing too.
I just think the actual removal in our formats is so good that it's unlikely that we're playing a bounce spell.
Yeah.
That's my one hesitation.
Well, I mean, I don't see it as like a bounce spell for I don't see it like as a creature. I don't see it as a creature bounce spell necessarily. I see it as a hate piece bounce spell for combo decks. That's how I see it. Because who cares if they have a tapped blue fish creature token if you are winning with, or you're able to cast this and then, cast your Ardent Plea or something like that in Living End. Because they have like a Chalice down or something like that. It's just more efficient than like an Otawara.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's enough on into the Floodmaw.
I've got another one that piqued my interest. I think this is our first lizard of the day. And that's Iridescent Vinelasher.
Yeah. This is the next card I wanted to talk about too, for what it's worth.
A single B for a Lizard Assassin 1/2. It has Offspring 2, which means you can pay an additional 2 as you cast a spell. And if you do, when this creature enters, create a 1/1 copy token of it. And it has Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. Clearly, it dies easily, though the Offspring can maybe give you a little bit of 2-for-1 action there. But I just wonder if this is something that you can try to break, even in Pioneer, with cards like Elvish Reclaimer and or Dryad of the Elysian Grove and or Scape Shifts.
And or just fetch lands in Modern, honestly, where it's just kind of like, I mean, this seems pretty marginal, but on the other hand, we've seen stuff that has land payoffs work better in the past. And so the fact that you can make 2 of these and do 2 damage every time a land goes into play is pretty interesting.
Yeah, this could add up. I mean, I do think the Offspring cost is not insignificant, right? It is an extra 2.
Yeah, but you get to decide if you want to do it or
yeah,
not.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm just saying, like,
it's huge about these things.
That is very cool. Yeah. So like it could be a little bit early, or mid game could be enough, like more.
All right.
Dave, I think you might be interested in this one. This is Might of the Meek, a red instant. Target creature gains trample until end of turn. It also gets +1/+0 until end of turn if you control a mouse. Trinket text, potentially. Draw a card.
Draw a card.
So this is a single red instant trample cycler. Note that Crash Through, its closest analog, I would think, potentially, is sorcery speed. Gives everyone trample, but this could honestly be better because your opponent can't see it coming and you could then draw into more action out of nowhere during the combat phase as well. So, they set up their blocks, maybe they're chump blocking, then you're just like, well, I've got Might of the Meek, I'm also drawing another card. So this, I think, this is cool. Like, I think I'd rather play this in Crash Through almost every time.
Yeah, I was just trying to think about if there's another analog if there's another instant speed trample adder. There is a card, and that card is Monstrous Rage.
Mm-hmm. Another good card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this card is actually close to that, and it's but it doesn't draw. Monstrous Rage doesn't draw a card.
No, it does not.
So, I don't know. Like it is pretty interesting. My gut says that Monstrous Rage is maybe a little better.
Why not
draw
both,
a card
baby?
is so good. Yeah.
Drawing a card is so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. I think this card's good.
I think it's potentially good. I think it might be outmoded by Monstrous Rage, but I will have to try it to see.
I mean, we literally play Crash Through in like modern prowess decks.
Not in a minute. I mean, Ryan Overturf plays it still, but if you look at the list that we're circulating over the weekend, nobody else is playing the card anymore. But I hear what you're saying. This is definitely a card that will be on my radar now.
Cool.
Can I talk about one more?
Hit me.
Valley Mightcaller. It's a green for a frog warrior with trample. It's a 1/1. It says whenever another frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on Valley Mightcaller. There is no cap on this ability. It is not non-token. It is not triggers once per turn. This just goes on over and over again. Feels like when you read it that it might be maybe in standard it gets play as like a beater that you can play on turn one, kind of a pelt collector kind of card, if you remember that particular card popping up in Pioneer and in standard at different points in time. I also wonder if the fact that it puts a +1/+1 counter might feed into some kind of counter synergy. Think about like a like Hardened Scales, or Shane noted Scurry Oak here in his notes on this card. In Modern or a format like that, where it's more about the fact that it just has unlimited amount of tokens that can be put on it that maybe you can use for something else, could be interesting. But this card looks like it's got a lot of text on it for a single green. I think it's pretty good.
I love that.
Stanislav, how do you feel about Mistbreath Elder?
Oh, yeah. I like this one. I love parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 2/2 frog warrior. Cool.
Yeah.
For green.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of your upkeep, return another creature you control to its owner's hand, which would be yours, potentially. I guess if you control your opponent's creature, goes back to their hand. If you do, you put a 1/1 counter on Mistbreath Elder. Otherwise, you may return Mistbreath Elder to its owner's hand. So this is a cheap little enabler that grows, and it's like starts off as a 2/2, which is like fine to good. Like this isn't
1-mana 2/2.
This isn't just like a little 1/1 that can die to a stiff breeze. Like it's decent. You can you could block something with 2 toughness, kill it off, blah blah blah. But this is going to grow pretty quickly, right? I mean, it does it the next turn. It doesn't do it on ETB or at end step or anything like that. But this, and then even without just growing itself, like you likely are playing this in synergistic decks where you want to be bouncing things on your upkeep.
Yes, and specifically, I want to bounce Wall of Omens, Wall of Blossoms.
This guy.
I think it's not 2011, but I think that
I don't know, man. Baggy pants are back, dog.
I mean, I like where Stan's going with that, because like if you're playing a like Wall of Omens-y style deck, perhaps, right? Then you can just sort of like leave this thing around. And like, if you're probably maybe playing something a little bit more controlling, and unless your opponent's removing this, like this thing can get out of hand after a while, and maybe it's just like enough of a thing that it's going to be the thing that's your opponent has to deal with at some point. But yeah, I mean, I think there's just lots of stuff that this coordinates with. So
yeah, I think the real problem is like we don't have Wall of Omens and Pioneer. I don't think. So
we do not.
Like, it's hard to think about like the best value generating ETBs we have in that format, because like I don't think you can play this in something like Modern, because this does just die right away to everything.
Yeah, I mean it's like a soul herder kind of thing potentially, right? Like that. And there are people who have fun with decks like that. Ephemerate plus this and kind of see where it goes. So I think it's possible, but I always think decks like that are just not that good. But
we can want them to be good.
We can want them to be good. Can I throw out some 2-drops? Because I feel like we've been talking a lot about prowessy decks, or Dave cards are like popping up around here, and I actually think there's a couple more at the two mana value slot.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time to talk about the 2-drops.
Emberheart Challenger for a generic and a red. This is a 2/2 Mouse Warrior with haste. It has prowess and it has valiance. Whenever Emberheart Challenger becomes a target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, exile the top card of your library until end of turn. You may play that card. This card seems pretty good. Now, we have entered an era where we have to deal with the fact that Slickshot Show Off is clearly a superior 2-mana card in shells like this, these spells plus creatures kind of shells. Like, that's still better. But having one that draws cards, I mean, this is way better than like Abbot of Carol Keep or any of the other, I think it's probably better than Sprite Dragon.
I think, though, this to me, it doesn't read like a prowess card because Valiant only triggers on spells that you control that target it.
Right.
And like, with the exception of Mutagen Growth, we're not playing a lot of pump spells in our prowess decks.
Yeah, I'm more thinking about what people have called Boros Heroic in Pioneer, right? Like, it's the deck that I played at Chicago when I was playing a Pioneer event there. It's more like Defiant Strike plus this and other things like that, which also has Slickshot in it, of course, as well. Monstrous Rage, that kind of thing. I think this card fits in well with there if you have space to be able to play another set of 2-drops. I just don't know if we can. For example, one card that I'm wondering if this is better than is 10th. What's it? 10th Legionnaire?
10th District Legionnaire.
Yes, which is a card that I don't even know if he's in those lists anymore. I think I had only 2 of in the list that I played a few months ago. But with this card being able to continually give me value, even if it's not getting bigger permanently, seems decent to me. So I think it's in this weird space where it's like it's a temporary pump, but you get to draw cards and you get to target it with stuff, and there you go. But yes, Stan, I think this is more like a heroic-y thing, a feathery thing.
Okay.
Yeah. This is definitely a card I read a couple times and tried to think about.
Yeah. And then another card that I read a couple of times and tried to think about is Kitsa, Otterball Elite for a generic and a blue, legendary creature, Otter Wizard. It is a 1/3 for 2.
Okay.
And it has Vigilance,
Prowess,
and a tap ability that says draw a card, then discard a card.
Looter.
And it has a 2 generic tap ability that says copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Activate only if Kitsa's power is 3 or greater. It's also got a like little Dreadhorde Arcanist ability kind of here.
Yeah, does this prowess? But I feel like the 2 and a tap has to already be 3 power or greater, means you've had to have cast 2 spells or put counters on it. That seems like a lot of mana.
It's a lot of mana. That's why I think it's almost good enough that this is just Vigilance, Prowess, and looting. I think it's still plenty good. Now, the question is if there's really a shell for this in Pioneer, because we're not playing this card in the way that Prowess is evolving in Modern. It's not fast enough for that. But this is a nice, resilient, like, card filtering engine that if you can get it up and sort of protect it from removal or just make it into a removal target, it can lend some resiliency to these decks that run out of cards. And that's what we're always looking at in decks like this, is like how to improve the use of the cards that we have, or make them, or filter them, or turn them into other cards that turn out to be better. And this seems pretty good at that, because he gets to attack still and then loot. He plays offense and defense. That's why it's an Otterball Elite.
Perfect.
It's an Iron Otter.
I think it's a cool card. I mean, I like the weird, like sort of prowess-y and like heroic-y type stuff, but like it doesn't like scream. It's not like, it's not the same as the flying, what is that thing that we just added to our prowess decks? That's very good.
Slick shot show
Yeah,
off.
it's not like a slick shot show off type card. I think like you said, like I think they can play into a variety of decks. Like there's some that I think like are stormy, like Stormcatch Mentor, blue and a red for an Otter Wizard 1/1 with haste and prowess. But instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast. So initially I was like, okay, does this like prowess or like storm? Like but what's weird is like prowess spells that you're reducing are typically the ones that you want to cost a single mana in the first place. But like then this opens up the possibility of playing ones that cost more than that do more.
Yeah, I mean, the cards that you're going to see here are like Reckless Impulse. I think that's the card that's going to get reduced in mana cost from this, or Seek the Beast, the front end of Questing, Druid. Like, those are the kind of cards that I think you might feasibly reduce with this. Everett tried a deck list where he was playing a bunch of those Impulse cards plus Ruby Medallion and thought that was kind of an interesting thing. So, I mean, this card is interesting. I do wonder if it's really two great tastes that taste great together or not, but it's a lot of text on here for 2. Again, it's got haste. A bunch of these things have haste.
Yeah, I mean I think there's possibilities that this opens up that other cost reducers do not, right? But like you said, like is this like a peanut butter and chocolate or like a peanut butter and spaghetti?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's really cool about this is that often with these cost reducers, you have to get a threat too. And this can be a threat on its own, even though it's a 1/1.
Isn't peanut butter and spaghetti basically like a pad thai type thing?
It's just pad thai, which
Pad
is great.
thai dog.
Oh man, that is good.
Pad thai.
Okay. Peanut butter and bananas. Everyone hates that. Oh wait, peanut butter and honey. Oh crap. I want to eat now.
Winnie the Pooh has words for you.
Peanut butter and hummus.
Okay, that would be bad.
Actually, it's good.
Drat. Stan, what do you got from these 2 drops? What are you into?
So one that stuck out to me was Brazen Collector. I think our first raccoon rogue. 2/1 first strike for 1 in a red. When it attacks, add R, single red mana. And until end of turn, you don't lose that mana as steps and phases end. So it's kind of like build your own goblin shaman.
Mm-hmm.
Something to think about. Another one that it's just gutter snipe. All right, it's just another gutter snipe, but I love gutter snipes, and that's
Coruscation.
Coruscation Mage. Is that a real word or is that a Magic the Gathering word?
Coruscation is a word. It means a gleam or flash of light or a sudden striking display of brilliance and wit.
Ah, yes.
Wow, okay. Webster over here.
So Coruscation Mage, 1 in a red for a 2/2 Otter Wizard. It has Offspring 2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. 1 mana cheaper than Gutter Snipe. Like, Gutter Snipe is not a good card. I don't know that it's ever been a playable card. Certainly not in my history of playing Magic. Maybe it was at some point before my time.
It's in my EDH deck. But that's what my EDH deck does. It's just all gutter snipes.
Yeah.
Too many gutter snipes.
And this would go in there. So it can get 2 gutter snipes from 1 card.
And the thing I find kind of interesting about this is that it can turn your gutter snipe almost into a young pyromancer-esque 2-for-1 because of that offspring ability. Mm-hmm. And
so Stanislav, you're saying gutter snipe when gutter snipe is 2 in a red. This is effectively 2 firebrand archers, which is, that's...
Oh, I forgot about that card.
Yeah, that's the 1 in a red 2/1 that does the same thing with the same cost, but cannot create an offspring.
Yes.
So,
okay.
I mean, this is more than a firebrand archer. So at least there's that.
That's in my deck too. Edge deck too.
I would hope so.
Electrostatic wall. There's a bunch of them.
I should put some of those in my Gearson Starn commander deck. Come to think of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's probably wishful thinking, like, to be totally honest, but I just find this effect to be very neat. I wonder if like Offspring is enough to kind of take it over the edge, and like maybe as like a plan B for either a Phoenix-esque Turbo Xerox deck or a Storm deck that can't actually storm off, that you're just kind of like putting some pressure on the opponent while casting spells. Like, this probably ain't it, but maybe we find that Offspring is good enough of a mechanic that it makes otherwise middling cards into actual considerations.
Speaking of more weird, like Storm adjacent-y stuff, Artist Talent just seems interesting to me. It's a class card. What's the actual difference? Oh, I see. You have to level it up. Okay.
You have to pay.
This is not a saga. Okay.
No, it's level up.
This card stinks, then I'm going to get rid of it altogether. The leveling up is way too much.
Well, wait.
Okay. I will not get rid of it then.
This card costs a generic and a red, and it says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may discard a card if you do draw a card. Level 2 is non-creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast.
And that costs 2 and a red to get there.
Right. And then level 3 is if a source you control would deal non-combat damage, it does that much +2.
Does this storm?
I don't think this storms. I think there's a card in this set, and I forget what it is. We were talking about it on Discord the other day. There's a card in this set that is basically Jeskai Ascendancy on a creature.
Yes.
Except it doesn't have the draw ability. And so if you can get that card out plus Artist Talent, you've kind of gotten Jeskai Ascendancy at home. And there are cards like, Stoke the Flames is legal in Standard right now. So I think there's a chance there could be like a standard combo off kind of thing. I don't think we need like a rule of 8 for Jeskai Ascendancy in Pioneer, for example, to make that deck suddenly good in Pioneer, but maybe that's a possibility where, you're playing Jeskai Ascendancy, you have a creature that's half of Jeskai Ascendancy, you have a class that is the other half of Jeskai Ascendancy, so all of a sudden you have way more redundancy in your deck, and I think there's like a small possibility that happens or turns into a thing, but I think more so this is like a Storm enabler for standard level Storm, which is Jeskai Ascendancy.
Yeah, I initially saw this as a saga, and it seems I think we'd be pretty good as a saga. Pretty good. Maybe not. Can we talk about Don's Truce really quickly? Because I don't really get this card. I just want you guys to help me figure this out.
I swear to God, I thought you just said Don, like D-O-N apostrophe S, Struce, S-T-R-U-C. I was like, who's his Struce?
Let's talk about Don Struce. So I was like,
yeah,
one in a white.
It's my favorite Mad Men.
One in a white instant. You can gift a card. Okay. Mm-hmm. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. If the gift was promised, permanents you control also gain indestructible until end of turn. This is like $20. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Is it that? Is it just an EDH? Good card.
It's another Teferi's Protection.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
That will be easier to get than Teferi's Protection for people,
So
and that's
this doesn't really have
card.
constructive chops, right? I mean, you're like 60 card constructed. Gifting opponent a card. It could be. I mean, there's so few cards that are like straight up useless. In Modern, there are more because you're playing like decks that are synergistic in themselves often, but so few cards are like straight up useless.
I just wonder if we're going to get to the point where like all these gift cards are going to make Narset Parter Veils more popular.
I love that you're trying to break the gift. You're trying to be a bad gift giver.
That's me.
Yeah, you're taking it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt it, but maybe that's possible. Maybe there'll be some great combo piece that goes with Narset that has the gift a card on it, but I don't think this is it.
I have a card that I think is actually potentially interesting. Probably like a Pioneer, or if creature, different types of creature combo come back, and you'll see why. This is, I mean, any other 2-drops that you guys want to talk about before we move on to the larger spells? Okay. Dewdrop Cure, 2 and a white sorcery. Gift a card. You may promise an opponent a gift as you cast a spell, blah, blah, blah. Return up to 2 target creature cards, each with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If the gift was promised, instead return up to 3 target creature cards, each with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So I think this is like an interesting option for creature combo decks, but you cannot convoke it like Return to the Ranks, but it only costs 3, unlike Return to the Ranks. So, and this gets up to 3 target creature cards back. Like if you have a convoluted combo, or like you need to have 3 cards back that like got wrathed away or something like that. Like this, this does the job for 2 and a white. And like, if you're going off, then gifting a card doesn't matter if you need to get up to 3. I mean, recursion spells are typically not that great, but I think in very particular setups, they can be. Oh,
yeah. I mean, they have applications for sure. I think this card is pretty good. This could be the card that I was just describing a minute ago that you put with Narset Parter Avails, maybe, and to be able to get your stuff back and just break off the gifted card part completely. There's probably plenty of combinations of 2 mana value or less that you could get back. Of course, there's always Devoted Druid and Vizier of Remedies if you were going to try to live that dream again, but there's other ones floating around Modern where you get them back immediately, and there you go. Put this with Teferi, cast it as an instant in their end step. There's stuff to do here. Yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's just costed right. You know what I mean? Like, I think 2 and a white for up to doing this. Like, this is one of those things where the gift is like a really nice flexibility option, because like playing this fair and gifting a card and getting 3 creature cards back is probably not that great. Playing this unfair and winning on the spot would be quite useful. So I just wanted to call out Pearl of Wisdom, which is it's a sorcery that draws 2 cards for 2 and a blue. It costs 1 less to cast if you control an otter. Also, if you had the other otter, like the stormy otter, it costs 1. So if we have otter prowess or otter storm, this is a thing. BT dubs. That's the only thing that makes me wonder for a quick second about it. We have Of One Mind in Pioneer and Modern, which is a card that I think is better than this because you can get it down to a single mana, even though it takes 2 creatures to do so. But, and we all know how much I love Of One Mind. But I have a card I would like to throw out there. And I have it under bigger spells, and you have it under cost reduction. That is Rottenmouth Viper for 5 generic and a black. You can't quit those giant black creatures. It's great. Creature, elemental snake. It's a 6/6. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice any number of non-land permanents. This spell costs 1 generic less to cast for each permanent sacrifice this way. Whenever Rottenmouth Viper enters or attacks, put a blight counter on it. Then for each blight counter on it, each opponent loses 4 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. You guys remember Croxa?
Yeah.
No, I know of Croxa.
Croxa that doesn't have, not having escape is bad, but also it comes into play and it just stays there, and the effect scales up over time. And if you play it in the right kind of shell, honestly, I was thinking about food-based shells, like the stuff that we were talking about with Devin the last couple of weeks with Basim Ibn Ishak and Blood Fountain and stuff like that, to be able to just get a whole lot of game objects really fast early, drop this as one of your payoffs, and then have other payoffs in that deck, maybe Basim, maybe other stuff, depending. This seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I don't think this card's bad. I think it's pretty cool.
I think the main thing that makes me look at it is that the effect scales up over time. So if they don't kill it, it's like getting 2 of these blight counter triggers on you is kind of crushing. Sack 2 things, discard 2 cards, or take 8 damage, and I'm attacking you with a 6/6.
Yeah, it closes the game quickly, which is quite nice.
Flage can't kill it. You know what I'm saying?
So I have another potential closes the game quickly, big black creature in the cost reduction category. What about Huskburster Swarm?
I don't think I see this card.
Are you looking at the spoiler during the episode, Stanislav?
I am, yeah.
My man.
Yes.
It's 7 and a black for an elemental insect 6/6. It costs 1 less to cast for each creature card you own in exile and in your graveyard.
How did I not see this?
And then it has Menace and Death Touch. See, here's why you guys didn't see it. It's because when you sort by mana cost, you always start at the top. I like to go to the bottom.
No, yeah, that's why I looked down there. I was looking for stuff with cost reduction.
Here's the thing. This card already kind of exists.
It's called Gurmag Angler.
It's not called Gurmag Angler. There's another one that came out in the same set as Tolarian Terror that is a black. It's in Dominaria. It's a black card that has almost the same text on it. And that card has not been good. I wish I could remember what it was called. I'm going to try to take this text and see if I can figure out what it is. But I was really high on that card when we did the Dominaria United or Dominaria. I think it's in Dominaria United.
Oh, yes.
But
one of our finest spoiler apps.
Yeah. Go back and check it out. And I was wrong. And the reason that I don't like this card as much is because it's actually really hard to get creatures into your graveyard in a significant amount to make this work. It's much easier to get spells into your graveyard, which is why Tolarian Terror is a card that shows up in formats like Pauper because as a win condition there.
I bet I can do it.
You can. I believe in you.
I just thought this was so I forgot about that card you're referring to. I'm not sure I ever even remembered it.
That's because when we spoiled it, we didn't need to talk about it. And Shane told me I was crazy and I wanted to talk about it. And then it didn't go anywhere. And he was right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I'm very close to finding the card, by the way. This card is called Writhing Necromass. And it is a 5/5 for 6 generic and a black. And it says this spell costs 1 generic less for each creature card in your graveyard. It has Death Touch. It's a common. It's basically the same card. It just doesn't have Menace and is slightly smaller.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a limited payoff more than anything else, personally.
Okay, we'll see.
Is Raw Crackling Wit a thing? This feels like it's a little bit too expensive, but it does make prowess tokens, which I do love. 2 blue-red legendary planeswalker Raw loyalty 4. Whenever you cast it on creature spell, you put a loyalty counter on Raw Crackling Wit. Cool. +1, create a 1/1 blue and red otter creature token with prowess. Cool. -3, draw 3 cards and discard 2 cards. -10, draw 3 cards. You get an emblem with instant and sorcery spells you cast have Storm. I don't know about this for 4 mana, but I do love prowess tokens. I do love selective card draw.
If this card is good, it's because of the -10.
Yes, of course, it has to be, right?
And so I think the +1 doesn't matter other than just like making a blocker.
Yeah.
This is like we're going to opt and consider until we get to 10, then we're going to go off.
If you could go off pretty quickly with this, and it protects itself, which is like that's like the things, right? It's like it gives itself protection, and then you go off and then go crazy.
Yeah.
You could just like do a bunch of stuff and then -10 it, and then like, lightning bolt, anything. You could, gut shot them, and they could probably die at that point. Could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it compared to like Monsoon Sage, like Raw Monsoon Mage or whatever, like the one that just came out in MH3. And I feel like, so I'm not sure.
This is like our standard Storm Planeswalker.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is fun. That's cute. That's cool.
I think this is another card that is maybe a piece that somebody's looking for some EDH deck that they have that's redundant to other things that they like to do in blue-red spells already. But
Is Maha its Feathers Knight a thing? I have to admit, whenever I see this, all I think about isn't there like a creature in like the Zelda games that's like, Yaha! Yaha! It's Feathers Knight. 3 black for a 6/5 legendary elemental bird with flying and trample, that legendary Flample.
it's just a dragon.
Yeah, ward, discard a card. Creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1. This is an expensive card, maybe because it's like a great EDH 5-drop or something like that. It seems like it's one of the more hyped cards in the set, but it does cost 5. I don't know what I'm doing with this. There's no like cost reduction. It's just a good standard power level or EDH power level card.
There's a card this combos with that
Is it
trying
that?
to find.
Oh, okay.
Is it Massacre Girl Known Killer?
Massacre Girl is nasty.
Creatures you control have Wither. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, if its toughness was less than 1, draw a card. No, there's another one that's just like creatures your opponents control just have -1/-1 or something. It's something.
That's a convoluted combo. That does include a 5-drop.
Oh, it's Karavek the Spiteful. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Other creatures get -1/-1.
Okay.
So you just kind of keep all of your opponent's creatures off the board. That's a thing, right?
I mean, sure.
It's you have to have 9 mana to get this combo up.
Or discard a card is good
I bet I could do it.
for a finisher, but I don't know what you're doing with like the base toughness one, besides like enabling, weird combos or like cheap, like Bile Blighty type stuff, or whatever the heck that just hits your opponent's creatures for small amounts of damage, but then would kill them because they have base toughness 1. But
Pairs well with Bowmaster.
sure, let's do this. I think that's where we're going. A 5-drop and Bowmaster.
Must have in all of your Bowmaster decks. Can we just take a second to talk about the season cycle?
If you want to. I don't think any of them are very good. They're all too expensive, but
I kind of agree, but
let's do it. Let's talk about it because it's interesting.
Yeah, it's just an interesting approach to modal spells where it's like you get 5 pause worth of modes and you can choose which ones you want to do. And the problem is like I don't want to read them all.
Yeah, I mean,
who does?
no one does. But yeah, I think it's the interesting thing is, like you basically get like a pool of resources and you get to spend it on different modes as you see fit.
Yeah, and it just makes me wonder if like the blue one might be okay in Control, because that's 4 blue where you can choose 5 paws. You can spend 1 paw to draw a card. You can spend 2 paws to choose an artifact or creature you control and create a token that's a copy of it. Or 3 paws, return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. And the way you can combine this is like you can bounce everything and then draw 2 cards, or make a copy and draw 3 cards. Make 2 copies, draw a card.
Draw 5 cards.
Draw 5 cards.
For 6 mana.
Are you just naming
Every
combinations right now?
So there's 3 modes, and then 5 of them. There's a lot of combinations.
I just wonder. It makes me wonder.
If this was 4 mana and you got like 4 paws, then maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, the green one seems not great.
They're all not great. They're all not Modern power level, and I don't think Pioneer power level.
I mean, the only one that I think is interesting is Season of the Bold, the red one. And the reason I think that's interesting is because the templating is like blowing my mind. Because it says the last one, if you use 3 paws on it, until the end of your next turn, whenever you cast a spell, Season of the Bold deals 2 damage to up to 1 target creature until the end of your next turn. So it's like you resolve this spell, and then you have to remember that it has an effect that stays in play for an entire turn after it's been cast, which is wild.
Just targeting one other creature, though.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's good. It's just the templating is like, wait, you guys did what with this card?
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk Mockingbird?
Yes, it's an interesting card.
Yeah, so it's X and a blue for a 1/1 Bird Bard with flying. Bird Bard, my favorite class in D&D. When you may have
My Elden Ring Bird Bard is going really well.
My Bird Bard build. You may have Mockingbird enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield with mana value less than or equal to the mana spent to cast Mockingbird, except it's a bird in addition to its other types and has flying. So this is a cool clone, and it gives it anything flying. But this doesn't scale well like other clones can do. Like, you can't clone a more expensive thing. Like, that's what the 4 mana clones do, like Spark Double or Phyrexian Metamorph or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, for this to clone something that is particularly good, you have to have a lot of mana. So I don't know what you're cloning with this necessarily, that even with like the flying keyword makes it pretty good. But I could be missing very obvious things.
I mean, the thing that's cool about it is that it clones cheap things for a cheap cost.
Yes, yes.
That's what's interesting about it. I don't think because remember, most clone effects cost 2 or 3 to do anything. And this one is like, I'm going to clone your 2-drop and give it flying. and then I'm going to Ragavan you.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that makes it good still, personally.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things like when it's going well, you're like, great, I love Mockingbird. When it's like going poorly, you're like, I hate Mockingbird. This card sucks.
Absolutely.
So I just think it's like an interesting, like it's like one of the more interesting clones I've seen. Like there might be other X clones out there, but like it just does interesting things. So
can I pick one last card,
please,
that I would like to put on your...
Should we do our last round of cards?
Yeah, I'm done.
I have one more.
Okay.
The Infamous Cruelclaw, a weasel mercenary. The art is sick. It looks very cool. Or they. I don't know. I don't know how infamous they are. We don't know their real name. A 3/3 menace. And here's what this card says. Whenever the Infamous Cruelclaw and deals combat damage to a player, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost.
That's cool.
Pretty good.
It's cool. I mean, it's interesting. Obviously the dealing combat damage to a player is the hard part here.
But it has menace, which makes it a little easier.
Yeah. And then you can exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card, like, Emrakul. And then you just discard a card from your hand and cast Emrakul.
Mm-hmm. You can even discard another Emrakul.
Sure. You could discard whatever you want. It could be a land that you discard. The other thing that's really interesting about this is that it doesn't say what to do with the cards that have been exiled after you do the trigger.
We saw that somewhere else. There's a card in is it Amped Raptor that just leaves the cards in exile?
Does it?
I think Amped Raptor just leaves the cards in exile. Yeah,
all of them.
I think that's the move now.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like, well, you could try to exile a huge amount of your deck if you want to, for some reason, with lands.
I'm sure we can find some reason to do that. I don't think that you're cheating out Emrakuls specifically, but I do think it's cool that, like, your point about like hitting opponents is hard. Probably not in Rakdos. Like, yeah. You pair this with like Fatal Push, Thoughtseize, Lightning Strike, I don't know. And you keep the board clear. This is always going to connect and generate like a ton of extra value.
Yep. I think it's interesting. All right, Stan, what's your last card?
Beza the Bounding Spring. 2 white for a legendary elemental elk. It's a 4/5. When it enters, create a treasure token if an opponent controls more lands than you. You gain 4 life. An opponent has more life than you. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens, and if an opponent controls more creatures than you, draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you.
Yes.
Can you just imagine a worse card to see if you're like 1 turn away from winning?
No.
I wonder if
Not
this is
at
just
all.
like another great control finisher. Granted, it does not have flying, which is a common keyword among historic prior control finishers, but I just feel like that's so much text, and it just always does the thing you want to do when you cast it. Unless you're already winning, and then it's like, okay, you have a 4/5, whatever. But,
right.
But you're winning, so it doesn't really matter.
Is this just a backup Omnath?
Well, it's an easier to cast Omnath. Like, it's an Omnath that doesn't require you to play Triomes.
Yep, exactly. Yes, this card is cool. I'm glad you brought it up. This seems like not a card I will ever play, but I think this card is good, too. Timely Reinforcements used to be a real card.
Exactly.
And now we have Timely Reinforcements with an extra white that has extra abilities stapled to it and is a 4/5.
Yeah.
I think this is an EDH card. I could be wrong.
This is not an I personally don't think there's any chance this is an EDH. Well, not any chance. I think that these abilities are much more sculpted towards catching you up in a 60-card game than they are sculpted to catching you up in a 100-card game.
Yeah.
That's how I read it.
Yeah.
I'm so out of the loop
point
on what white EDH decks are trying to do anymore. Like back when I was actually trying, they always have, right? And it's always about catching up. Like I just feel like every white card for EDH is like, how do I catch up?
I just think this doesn't catch you up enough to really, you know what I mean? Like, it's not an abusable enough engine unless you're ephemerating this all the time.
That's if you can blink this, let's go.
Yeah. And then and it's also if any opponent has more life, if any opponent has more creatures, if any opponent has more cards. You know, we are now an EDH podcast, but when you play this in EDH, you probably get all 4 triggers every time, which maybe is worthwhile. But the scale of what they do seems more appropriate to a 60 card to me.
Yeah.
But
it could be. I'm fine being wrong.
I'm not really married to being right. I just thought this card had a lot of text, and it seems like as soon as I ever see it cast against me, I'm going to be really upset.
Yeah, I like that card.
Should we do some more spoilers next week?
Yes, and there's plenty of cards to talk about, and we'll probably have close to the full set next week, so there'll be plenty to talk about.
No, we're not there yet. I thought we were kind of close.
Maybe Devin can correct us on some of our misconceptions or point out cards that we've missed as well.
All for it.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, until then, let's wrap up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. If you'd like to submit a question to our podcast, you can reach out via Twitter at The Dive Down, all one word, or via email, thedivedown@gmail.com. If you'd like to support our show, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown and check out our store, thedivedown.com/store. Head over to heavyplay.com to get some incredible deck and dice boxes and playmats featuring the Equip Mag system. Using promo code TheDiveDown2024 gets you 10% off your first order at heavyplay.com. And shout out to Mana Traders for sponsoring the Dive Down. If you sign up for Mana Traders using our promo code, TheDiveDown_8LU, all one word, it'll get you 10% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and visit the realm of Bloomburrow.
Redwall.
I was playing pinball this weekend, Stanislav, and I was playing a lot of the Iron Maiden one, and then 4 down was the Twister one from I'm guessing close to the time the movie came out. And for whatever reason, the vocal sample of Helen Hunt, I believe, saying, "Are you okay?" plays like every 45 seconds, just when it's idling, and I'm like, this is not appropriate. I want to be hearing Iron Maiden. I don't want to be hearing a vocal sample from the pinball.
Do you like Iron Maiden, the band?
No, I don't really actually. I don't really honestly don't think I know anything about Iron Maiden. I probably know a few maybe radio hits if they had them.
They don't have any. That's one of the cool things about Iron Maiden is they're really fun and catchy and poppy in their own metal way, but they never saw a ton of radio play. I love Iron Maiden. I've seen them live 3 or 4 times. I'll make you a playlist. A little intro playlist.